guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Brenda with Vintage Adventure, and I have another ASMR term paper reading for you. This one is from 1988. Looks like I was in a summer session class. Sociology 205, I believe it was Death and Dying was the name of the class. And I chose the topic, the colors of death. This professor, Robert Bailey, is pretty famous in these areas. He was one of the first black professor hired, African-American professor hired at UW River Falls in the 50s. And I was lucky enough, he was still there in the 80s, that I took a couple of courses, sociology courses from him. And his popular course was on death and dying. We read Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's book of the same title, and he brought in a host of people to talk to, or to lecture, guest lecturers. One of them, I believe, was the half-brother of Chevy Chase, who had went to college at River Falls for a while, maybe, and talked about his near-death experiences as a drug addict or something. Again, don't quote me on all this. This is just my recollection. And I think I also had in that class a woman that was Huntington Hartford's daughter. Hazelden had a outpatient residential facility in town, and a lot of those folks went to college at River Falls while they were in their outpatient facility. And it was a halfway house, I guess you would call it. But Huntington Hartford was the founder of the AP grocery chain, I think. And I had her in an art class too, but I think I met her in the death and dying class. And she did a portrait of me. I have it somewhere in the basement, if it's not wrecked. I can't remember her name. I have to dig that up. But anyway, just so many memories flooding back about Doc Bailey's class. I don't remember which class it was, but he had us do an assignment to do something totally out of the ordinary for someone. So, of course, it was getting to the deadline of the project, and it was River Falls days. Maybe it was this class because it was in the summertime. And the carnival came to town. So I went over to the parking lot where they were set up on campus. Again, this was for the town community celebration. And asked one of the workers at the carnival, do you have to buy your own food or do you get free food? And they said, no, we have to buy everything. So I ended up going to one of the vendors and buying soft drinks for everybody. I think I maybe spent like $10 because it was like 50 cents a drink or something. But then had to write about it. Maybe I'll find that paper in my box here. I got a new box for them all, so I can read them, put them in the back, and then throw them all away is my goal. But let's get into it. The colors of death. Color has long been associated with human emotions, and some of the strongest human emotions arise in the event of death. Consequently, people naturally associate certain colors with both life and death rituals. Color has been associated with the phases of death, including the mourning process, funeral rites, decoration of the dead and the grieving, and objects associated with death, such as amulets, art forms, statues and memorials, caskets and hearses. In recent Western culture, certain colors are associated with death. However, the importance of color is not as significant as it was years ago. Symbolism and meaning for colors has been based upon religion, mysticism, tradition, and history. Faber Buren, a recognized color psychologist, said that nearly all of early color expression concerned mysticism and the enigmas of life and death. Historical accounts show that early man made no attempt to study the science of color or to investigate its beauty. However, he was diligent at applying color to meanings of life to give it personal and human meaning. Color also played a mystical role in early life because of the sun and its worship, and the sun was the factor necessary to see color. Another color psychologist, Deborah Sharp, says that since man has been able to express himself through the written word, we have documented examples of attached emotional meanings to color. Human reaction to color is related to the immediate experience, acting directly on the emotions, and yet is curiously abstract. Thus, color is an entity that is difficult to describe to a person who has been blind from birth, but can be somewhat described through the use of senses and emotion. The Roman Catholic religion describes black to symbolize the sorrow and somberness of death, purple to symbolize gloom and melancholy, red to symbolize fire and blood, white for purity, and green for the hope of eternal life. During medieval times, black symbolized grief and repentance, purple for royalty, red for courage, white for faith and purity, and green for growth and hope. Modern Western interpretations of color are similar to the Catholic view. Black to symbolize mourning, purple to symbolize mourning and desperation, red for danger and excitement, white for cleanliness, and green for peace and quiet. See Appendix 1 for a chart illustrating some modern Western definitions of reaction to and meaning of basic colors. This is from Faber-Burren's book. Emotional aspects of color can be based on appearance, association, and interpretations of a color. According to the book, The Language of Drawing and Painting, color is an expression of mood by the certain choice of hues, intensities, and values, or by strong or slight contrasts of any of these factors. The basic comparisons of dark and light, even with a color, can change the emotional association. According to the book Color, a bright golden yellow is joyous, but a pale bilious yellow is the shade of disease. When a color moves toward a shade with the addition of black, it becomes melancholy. The word melancholy is from the Greek word melos, meaning black. History of the colors of death. The earliest use of color with the death ritual was some 70,000 years ago during the age of the Neanderthal man. In 1856, a Neanderthal skeleton was discovered in West Germany. The skeleton was covered with a red ochre and black manganese dioxide. Red ochre is some form of earth containing iron. It is thought that Neanderthal man was the first of his predecessors to bury his dead and acknowledge deliverance to an unknown world beyond death by covering the body with red ochre, which represented life force or blood. Later, affirming this belief of the red ochre and afterlife, Cro-Magnon man was discovered in Europe with red ochre either on the body or around the grave. Anne Turner, in her book Houses for the Dead, compares the use of red ochre in Neanderthal man to the use of cosmetic rouge in the embalming process today. In the 5th century BC, Etruscans hired artists to paint murals on the inside of their relatives' tombs. These murals were brightly colored and were thought to provide an afterlife for the dead. For example, if the relatives requested a banquet scene with the dead person among the festivities, they believed that the dead person would feast forever in the tomb. Ancient Egyptians thought certain colors had magical powers. King Tutankhamun's coffin in the Egyptian Museum at Cairo is gilt-covered and adorned with blues, blue-greens, and reds. The blue-green stones of lapis lazuli and turquoise were used as amulets on the dead in the form of scarabs and were thought to prevent the dead person's hearts from testifying against them when they were weighted in the balance by the god Osiris. A speech for the deceased from the Egyptian Book of the Dead says, "Thou shalt make a scarab of green stone, which shall be placed in the breast of a man, and it shall perform for him the opening of the mouth." Jewels were also thought to keep the soul in its quest for the afterlife, and some stones were thought to represent various stages of life or death. The jet, Tjet, a red stone, gave the virtue of the blood of Isis the Ab, or a heart amulet. Red preserved the soul of the physical body. The Udjat, gold, gave health and protection. The Sma amulet was brownish and enabled the dead man to breathe again. Statues representing various gods were painted black because the Egyptians believed that black was the color for rebirth. Black was also the color of gestation or pregnancy. The smearing of color on corpses is common among many modern-day tribal societies that retain their folk cultures. In Africa, South America, and Indonesia, people color their dead always with red ochre and sometimes in black and white as well. The colors of red, white, and black are universally used for a variety of reasons. These pigments are easily obtained from earth sources such as iron, soot, charcoal, chalk, clay, and ashes. But in places where these pigments are not readily available, tribal societies travel far to obtain them. For example, Australian Aborigines travel hundreds of miles to gather red ochre from a mythical trail of dogs whose blood is said to provide the ochre. The red ochre Aborigines smear on their dead indicates a symbol of blood shed at birth and then for rebirth into another world. Aborigine mourners smear themselves with white clay. White, red, and black are also believed to represent birth, life, and death. New Guinea women cover themselves with white clay in mourning to signify that they have a temporary affinity with the spirits. The Crejo Indians of South America used red for adorning corpses, for ceremonies involving the medicine man, and also to indicate the best female singer in the village who wears a red scarf to carry her firstborn child. Other South American tribes crush berries to make a black stain in which to cover their bodies during mourning. Family members paint their bodies in relation to how close of a relative they are. Tribes in the Bay of Bengal Island cover a newborn child with white clay, and also adult members of the tribe cover themselves with white clay in mourning. In the 1880s, the Sioux American Indian tribe painted the bodies of their dead red, the color of life. In tribal societies, color is also used for social relationships and for adornment, but its supreme use is for life stage rituals. The use of color in this manner seems to be a way of ordering life into association with some other, more inward life peculiar to man. The primary colors of yellow, red, blue, and the secondary color green dominate colors in the death ritual in Bali, Madagascar, and the West Indies. These colors symbolize a better afterlife. The demon masks used on Bali funeral pyres, or places where the dead are buried, are also brightly colored to ensure a cheerful afterlife. The color black is the most unpopular color with many African nations as well as Hindus and Buddhists, because it is associated with hot weather, and in hot weather, white clothing is worn. It also has a symbolic meaning of darkness and an associative meaning of death. In India, a dead body is viewed as unclean, so it is put in white clothes for funeral rites. After rites, it is covered with a white sheet to signify mourning and purity. Chinese adorn themselves in white while in mourning to signify sorrow and humility. White is used not because it symbolizes purity, but because it is linked to metal, the deadest element, and with the West, the land of the setting sun. A Chinese bride is also adorned in white, which symbolizes that she is dead to her family, but not in a negative sense. She is leaving her parents and siblings to start her own family. In Mexican folk culture, a day for the dead is called All Souls Day and is celebrated each year. Special foods are prepared and arranged on colorful tables. Altars to honor dead relatives are set up with the traditional yellow Cempasúchil flowers surrounding the shrine. These yellow flowers have been used since pre-Hispanic times in these celebrations for the dead. The Western culture's tradition of using the color black for mourning began in the 1500s. According to the book Designs for the Dead, by 1532, mourning meant the wearing of black clothes, etc., as a manifestation of sorrow for the death of a friend. During the reign of Queen Victoria, known as the Victorian Age, black mourning jewelry of jet, a black coal of fossilized wood, was worn for full mourning, 6 months. During half mourning, jewelry of mauve, purple, and gray was permissible. Also, the best mourning jewelry was considered to be made from the dead person's hair. This color transition was the same for mourning clothes, although widows were to remain in black the rest of their lives. Crepe, a black silk fabric that had been associated with mourning since the 1500s in Europe and became extremely popular in mourning etiquette during the Victorian Age. Other objects that were to be black included trimmed stationery and sealing wax, black trimmed handkerchiefs, door knockers, handbags, draperies, etc. Even bird cages and plants were covered in black crepe, and a bit of crepe was attached to the domestic cat during human mourning. White was the mourning color for children during the Victorian Age. Queen Victoria said, "I think it is quite wrong that the nursery are not in mourning. At any rate, I should make them wear gray or white or drab, and baby wear white and lilac, not colors. I think shocking." By the 1880s, mourning etiquette was relaxing, and children were the first to be affected by this changing attitude, according to the Ladies' Pictorial. It is desirable that children should be put in mourning dress as seldom as possible, only in fact for the very nearest relatives. The little children do not understand it, and it is absurd to invest them with the signs of grief they do not feel. Absence of a positive color is quite sufficient mourning for children. After Queen Victoria's death, attitudes changed even more. A 1901 Lady Pictorial said of the Queen Alexandra's age, "The fact is that for the last decade or so, the time of mourning for private persons has been considerably shortened, and the mourning garb itself shorn of much of its distinctiveness. Good taste and common sense are alike concerned in the new order of things. Living in a somewhat pessimistic age, we do not feel that death is the unmitigated evil which it was held to be, strangely enough, in more pious times." Present day, the Victorian Age beliefs have obviously carried over into the death rituals of the United States. Black is still used as a color to symbolize mourning, death, and grieving, but it is not a revered custom as it was in the Victorian Age. The association of black with the unknown perhaps plays a large part in this custom. Hearses are usually black or gray, and caskets are generally gray, blue-gray, mauve, or red-brown. Most people would certainly not attend a funeral dressed in red. Mourners generally dress in black, gray, or soft colors as in tints or shades. Flowers at funeral range from the typical white lily to dark red roses. This range of colors used in U.S. death rituals shows some tradition. However, adherence to color in death rituals seems to have lost its importance in the increasingly heterogeneous society. Conclusion. Colors in all societies do not signify any absolute meaning for death. Rather, they are only significant when used in relationship to each other. Many cultures use white, red, and black to signify birth, life, and death. These colors have meaning only in their significance to each other, as they are used alone for other very different social implications. The colors of death derive their meaning from color relationships, tradition, history, and supernatural beliefs. I looked at this. And here's our bibliography. 100 Years of Collectible Jewelry by Lillian Baker. Color Psychology and Color Therapy by Faber Buren. Designs for the Dead by Barbara Jones. Death, Heaven, and the Victorians by John Morley. The Language of Drawing and Painting by Arthur Pope. The Psychology of Color and Design by Deborah Sharp. Death in America by David E. Stannard, editor. Houses for the Dead by Anne Warren Turner, and Color by Helen Varley, editor. Thanks for listening. Peace out.